And we begin tonight with Jennifer Friedenbach, who is the director of the Coalition on Homelessness in San Francisco. Jennifer has been a member of many governmental bodies, including the local Homeless Coordinating Board, the mayor's 10-year plan to abolish chronic homelessness. And Jennifer is a resident of San Francisco with 2 children. And I know that you have dedicated many, many years to the plight of street people. Your credentials are impeccable. You and I have had many on-air discussions. So today, you come into the studio, and I come into the studio as we tape this program, and the headlines are, "Enough is enough," it appears by polls that San Franciscans are getting fed up with the condition of the streets. That is, well, the usual defecation, urination, hassle, all. What was your reaction when you saw that poll?
What I saw, they didn't actually put any results, publish any results in the Chronicle in terms of polls. They made a loose comment.
But you'd agree that there's a growing uneasiness with the condition of our streets.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would want to say that, I mean, I think the article appeared on the Chronicle front page above the fold, once again, as a way to boost readership and increase the online subscriptions. And so they do this by kind of promoting a very hate-type based message.
Hate?
Yeah, very hate. You know, a lot of very vile things said about homeless people. You read these articles that are done by Nevius, and if you substituted homeless for any other class of people, I think folks would be pretty offended by it.
Wait a minute, hold on. Let's go back. I had Chuck on program last week. I don't know if you got to see it. Are you saying there were no encampments in Golden Gate Park?
No, there are, but there's ways to write about issues that...
Oh, so you don't think the story's wrong. You think the method of writing about it is what you're complaining about?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
then
yeah.
Do we have...
Well, it's not a story. He's not a journalist, actually.
No, but
he's a columnist.
He was an eyewitness. He was on the program, and he admits that they went out there to find the coyotes and kill the coyotes, and then people started writing in, as is the case of the Chronicle, giving stories about encampments, and he went out there, and he found them, and it led to the mayor doing something about it, looks like.
Well, what it led to was, I mean, the city closed down a shelter and then opened it up the very next day only for Golden Gate Park residents. It led to huge property confiscations that were mishandled and people losing their very last of their belongings very irresponsibly by the city.
How would you have handled it?
Well, I mean, what we need to do and what context is lacking in the Chronicle when Nevius writes those articles is the root causes of homelessness, and we don't have any.
Okay.
We don't have any analysis of that.
But we do.
We don't have any. No, but wait. When we spend $8 million, the Newsom administration has spent almost $8 million to date doing exactly what he was doing in Golden Gate Park, using the police to move people from particular areas, and all it is whatever's politically popular at the moment.
But you know, the fact is that when
and
you talk
it achieves nothing.
But the money, if we're talking about money, the official budget is $100 million. The actual budget is approximately $300 million. But let's just take the $100 million that we know that goes to nonprofits and other organizations. If you multiply that times 10 years, that's $1 billion. And for the three decades that you've been doing this, that's $3 billion. Where's the outcome if we're discussing the same topics you and I were discussing some time ago? If you keep putting it as housing for everyone, in the meantime, the citizens seem to be getting angry about urination, defecation on the streets, encampments in the parks. Wouldn't you agree that they have a right to be concerned about that?
Right. I mean, yeah, people do have
a right
to be concerned.
The needles problem in the park and so on?
Right, and where we all come together is on solutions.
What's the solution?
A solution is making sure that we have every human being in San Francisco has a permanent, affordable house.
You can't just give everyone a house.
You certainly can.
No, you can't.
Every human being has a right to housing.
Well, hold on. That's where we differ. But the fact is, first you wanted shelters, and now the street people will not go to shelters.
No, we never call for shelters.
Okay. Well, let's put it
shelters.
this way. Homeless advocates did call for shelters initially.
What happened let's just take it back a couple and a half decades. So what happened originally when we ended up having so many people on the streets in 1983 was after the federal government had cut their housing, the commitment to housing, by about 85%. It dropped down to the very lowest point. It was this huge drop. And at that very lowest point of housing funding, the very first homeless shelter opened up in San Francisco. What people thought at that time, it wasn't necessarily homeless advocates, but what people thought at that time was a temporary phenomenon, and that the response to that would be trying to create some shelters. The Coalition on Homelessness formed very shortly thereafter and said, wait a minute, let's not put all our money into temporary solutions. That's basically putting money down the hole. What we need to do is get at the root cause. We need to address the housing crisis and get people back in housing.
So what kind of housing would you want to create for every San Franciscan living on the street?
Just basic, clean, decent, affordable housing. You know,
Now,
so you have, you know, people should have bare minimum.
SROs? Single
SROs,
residence?
SROs
You're talking about a one-bedroom apartment?
Yeah, you need
for everyone. For anyone on the street should get a one-bedroom apartment.
Or at least a studio. You should
Should
have
they
cooking
pay rent
facilities
for it?
and bathrooms. Yeah, I mean,
They should pay for rent, but if they don't have rent, what do you do?
well, you pay. I mean, you try to do it according to the federal standards, which people are paying 30% of their income.
The people on the street don't have money for rent. That's why they're on the street.
Well, you have, you know, most people, not everyone, is trying to get off the streets and trying to exit poverty.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, we do outreach to people every single day.
Why are there? But I mean, why are there now 62 or 6,300 people on the street, whereas last year there were less, and the 200 to 300 million continues to be pumped into the system? It seems to me that that solution is just not working.
Well, we can talk about the 100 million if you want to talk about that. Very little of the 100 million in terms of if you look at what that breakdown for that is, that includes all the services, pretty much city services that are offered to people who happen to have housing. So if you look at that, you're talking about mental health treatment and people who are housed, and a particular individual, whether they have housing or don't have housing, probably are going to still need that mental health treatment because they're too poor to afford it.
Okay, do you think
if substance abuse treatment, same thing, public assistance,
I think actually the money's
costs.
all the health department costs are not in that $100 million.
Not all of them.
They've never audited the health department. They do not know how much is being spent on people living on the streets.
Well, actually, there's been a lot of work in the health department on that very thing and tracking people who have multiple. There's been a few different
but not
studies
generally.
of that.
There's stories about people who've gone through the system 40 or 50 times. There's stories of people who've had $1 million worth of health benefits because they didn't have a health history of that person. They had to go through all the diagnostics and so on. Those are stories that document.
But you can have the health department on your show and talk about what
but
they do.
Here's
but
the
they
thing.
do a lot of
if you
research on
cannot, that's what you're saying is if you cannot get a one-bedroom apartment for every person living on the streets, San Franciscans should get used to urination on the streets, defecation on the streets, and needles in the park and encampments wherever it's possible. Isn't that what the logic of what you're saying is?
No.
Until there's a house or apartment for everyone, we should tolerate that.
Well, it's, you know, we draw
Just
a line
say yes
somewhere
or no.
else.
I'm curious.
You know,
This is one time because I know that you're one of the smartest people I've ever interviewed. Isn't the logic of what you're saying, that is, if until there's a house or apartment for every single person on the streets, they have a right to live on the streets, therefore they have a right to defecate, urinate, and leave needles wherever they find them.
They have a right to the basic human and civil rights that anybody else has in the city, and that's all we've ever called for. So in terms of if someone's breaking the law, I am answering
Okay,
you.
good. Now you get it. Breaking the law.
If someone's breaking the law, for example, if someone's using drugs in possession of drugs,
Sleeping in
selling
someone's
drugs,
driveway.
Sleeping in someone's driveway, on private property, then, of course, that ends up being a problem, and the individual has to leave.
What's your solution? That's where we started.
Our solution, if we're talking about solutions to homelessness, we're going to continue seeing these issues, and we're going to continue seeing mayors ending up using the police to simply move people around. We're going to try that. It's going to fail.
Jennifer, you're not going to this time.
No.
No, I agree that you're saying that will happen. I'm asking you. Oh, what you're saying?
Let me finish,
your
or
answer
else I
is
can't
yes.
answer.
I just got it. The
No,
answer
because
is yes.
I'm not going to give an overall yes to all.
Do
those
you
things.
think they have a right because they don't?
I don't
have
think
a
someone
home?
has a right to, for example, defecate on the street. No,
You don't.
I think that no. I think that when that happens, and I think that every time you mention homeless people and defecation in the same sentence, I think that's a kind of a class generalization that's pretty problematic.
You have to come with me
But
to streets in my office neighborhood. I'll admit it's not Tenderloin. It's Cal Hallow. Okay, I can show you right next to my car where we park on Union Street. It's not something reserved for the Tenderloin. It's not reserved for 6th Street. It's happening off of Van Ness. There's an art shop there called Blick's. Down that alley is a camping site. Right there on a sidewalk is what we're talking about. This is unacceptable.
is what on the sidewalk?
Defecation.
Yeah. So,
what do you propose to do about that then? If we kind of agree that that's not appropriate, even though the person doesn't have a home and does not want to go to a shelter, you do not think that's acceptable behavior?
No, of course not. I mean, nobody wants to deal with that. And when we're looking at an issue like that, we need to have logical solutions to that. So the first logical solution is start working really hard to try to get housing for everyone who's involved.
All right.
The other piece of that is making sure people have access to bathrooms. And beyond that, if someone has access to a restroom, and even if they don't have access to a restroom and they're defecating on the street, most likely they've got a pretty severe psychiatric illness, or they have a severe substance abuse. They have a serious problem, because most folks, even folks I know who are without housing, who don't have access to restrooms, are going to do things like put a plastic bag in a crate, use that, tie it up.
But I mean, are you suggesting involuntary commitment of those?
No, I'm saying that if you're
in New York, they're doing that now.
In New York City, they're doing what, I mean, the laws are pretty universal. I mean, you have to have, people cannot be locked down for their psychiatric illness unless they meet certain criteria. And that's the case in California. The laws are a little bit different, but the case in California. So for people, and it's not, you don't need to take an extreme step. I mean, we have a situation in San Francisco where people do not have access to basic psychiatric care. They don't have access to ongoing, just seeing a psychiatrist and having access to medications. For a lot of folks, when they have severe psychiatric disorders, they don't have access to residential treatment.
So what do you suggest?
So we need to make sure that we have community-based
But what if they don't want to use it?
treatment.
What if they don't want to use it? They don't like the shelters. They don't want to have to go to any drug treatment. Can you force them to do that? If they break the law enough times, can they, like in New York in the community court system, the supportive services are in the very facility where the courts are.
The supportive services in New York City is cleaning the street.
Well,
in front of the richest corporations on the planet.
As I understand it from Jocelyn Rowe, who was here, and he was sent by the mayor to New York to look at the community court system. He's a very dedicated person. It's my understanding what they've done is basically taken supportive services, put them in the same facility, and if a person is found guilty of those infractions enough times, they are ordered to those supportive services. They don't make a choice about it. It seems to me, for their own good, for the people on the streets that you're talking about, we should step in and intervene. They won't do it themselves.
And in New York City, that's a fallacy.
Tell me about here. Tell me about here. What would you do to those who don't want to take advantage of the health care and continue, therefore, to live on the streets and do all the things we're talking about?
Homelessness, it's a great fallacy that homelessness is a lifestyle choice. People do not choose to be laying on the streets, to get rained on, to get harassed by the police, spit on by the general public, constantly looked down upon, to be this underclass that's totally hated, that's written about in the Chronicle in such nasty terms. People don't choose that situation. When you offer people safe and decent, affordable housing, they take it.
I agree.
When people are in psychiatric distress and you offer them psychiatric care, they take it.
Wait a minute. Is that a universal statement? Are you saying that every person on the street will take, if they had advantage of all the psychiatric care that's available out there? I know for certain that people who were put in under Project Connect into buildings got themselves evicted because they wouldn't behave by the rules of that apartment building or that complex.
Well, I mean, in those situations where they're putting them in stabilization rooms, they're not giving them tenant rights, for one thing. And the other situation is that, I mean, we get people all the time that are put out of that rooms because they don't make an appointment. What we do is we set up a system, that puts requirements on individuals who are unable to, because of their disability, meet those requirements, and then we put them out of those same services.
The city is very tolerant of your programs, and they have been very tolerant of and waiting for these programs to work. I think what the Chronicle article shows is that the patience has run out, and it's not your fault. You've worked very hard, and your group has, and so has Paul Bowden and the others. It may just be time we have to try some other solutions.
But we're not trying anything new. We're trying the same thing that has failed over and over again. Tried and failed, tried and failed, tried and failed.
It's like the surge in Iraq, Jennifer.
It's the same thing that's been tried, and it's already been failed.
We have to go.
As soon as we use the police, we're just pissing money down.
We'll come back and look at it again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And stay with us. We'll be right back.